So AJ, you're at the start of we'll get you into the depths of your off season now after a very productive 2021 season. Tell us some of the highlights from the year of your accomplishments. It's quite a season.
So, yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you very much for having me on, mate. I really appreciate it. I love the content you've put out for a long time. So it's really, really cool to be on this podcast. In terms of where I'm at, so yeah, I'm about sort of coming into about 13 weeks deep into off season. Most of that was made up of recovery post show, in the sense that when you get into, as you know yourself, you get into stage condition, the immediate phase in that post competition window, as much as we want it to be full of growth and new muscle and PBs, it's just really not that way, especially when you do these preps naturally and you have a whole host of physiological issues at play that you have to start to try and remedy in those preceding months. So it was a pretty aggressive prep towards the back end. It was kind of, unfortunately, from a trajectory standpoint, it wasn't really ideal. I had a very short window of time in an off-season phase between 2020 and 2021. So I hammered that as hard as I could. And as a result, I started perhaps a little softer than I would have liked at the 25-week out mark. So I was already playing catch up. So I got to pretty close out, and I realized that I had that bit more to go again, that I didn't manage to get off in 2020. So I had to push really hard. And as a result, it left me in a bit of a deeper hole than my 2020 prep. And the recovery from that was almost instantaneous. And the recovery from this one has been only up until the last couple of weeks that I felt relatively 100, like almost close to 100%, within just how I feel day to day, energy wise, libido coming back, food focus dying off, all of those good things that we kind of want, and they're a sign that we're getting into a good productive place to actually grow and change and put on some new muscle tissue. So yeah, and highlights of the season, I mean, number one for me was I always envision winning an open British title. It's been a goal of mine for a long time, ever since I got into bodybuilding as a teenager. I remember watching my first natural British final and seeing the people win those classes, middleweights, the heavyweights, lightweights, and I just really want to do that at some point. I want to be that good. And to do it still doesn't, I don't think I let that set in, or I even like fully appreciated that success, because my mindset, and I'm sure it's very similar to yourself, it's like, okay, well, what next? So it was like 2 weeks after that was a world championship, and another 2 weeks after that was the Natural Olympia. So it was all like in quick succession. Good shows. I would have loved to have won all three. It didn't work out that way this time, but I'm a big believer in bodybuilding and in life in general. When you don't get what you want out of a goal, it just highlights areas in which you can be better and improve. So that's now the goal for me, is just to come away from the stage for as long as needed to come back and then not place second at all. So, or at least that's the goal. So whether I can do that or not is depending on so many other variables, but that's what my vision's on at the moment.
It's often completely out of your control, right? When it comes to bodybuilding, you don't know who's going to turn up, right? So it's always out of your control. That. Well, when you said it's been a hard recovery phase, what sort of variables have been really difficult to recover specifically?
For me, I think the physiological aspect was the main one. I spent a long time back in the prep with very low sex drive, very hard to attain aggression in the gym, which is one of the biggest markers for me. Like, it's all forced aggression. It's nothing's like natural. It's no like oomph when you're approaching the bar. You're having to just summon it from dust, and that just wears so heavy on you when you keep doing that again and again and again, and you're basically trying to exaggerate or wake up a neurological pathway that's not actually functioning properly, and that for me now is still probably not where it needs to be. I'm not approaching the bar as I have in past off seasons when, testosterone's at its peak and I'm really able to fully instigate everything into a set, which is frustrating because I love training. I love training more than I love competing by quite a long way, to be honest. So yeah, that's probably one of the main things. The food side of things, I think this is something that comes as a skill over the course of times. Bodybuilder, like, just develop a quite a natural skill at trying to just block out hunger or block out any sort of element of food focus. So I wouldn't say that I really experienced anything negative on that side of things, because the only time I had was after my first prep, where I learned a lot of lessons about how not to eat after a show, you know. So I am in a more confident position within what I do post show with food. I can get back to normal with regards to food focus very quick. I wouldn't say that I really have a food focus at all during the diet, really, just because my mindset's not on that. It's on other things, and I just eat what's required for the goal. So yeah, and then outside of that, I think energy and digestion took a pretty significant hit as well towards the back end. I took my food probably the lowest that I'd ever have it. Well, as long as past as I can remember, I don't think I've ever consumed that little calories in my entire life. There was some days where I was sub 1300.
Okay,
between 1200 and 1300, and that was also coupled with the highest was brutal. It was 15 to 20,000 steps with all the walks being done with a 20-kilo weighted vest, which is right behind me on that treadmill there. Which, trust me, 20 kilos weighted vest is no joke. That feels like you're literally walking in mud.
You were doing all of them, all your steps with 20 kilos on?
Not all of them, all the walks. So it's only the steps you actually go outside the house to get, you know what I mean? I wasn't wearing it in the gym. I wasn't wearing it outside of those walks. So it was typically 2 half-an-hour walks a day that I'd do with that 20-kilo vest on.
Yeah, it's rough.
So that was cardio in itself. And then as I got closer to the first show, I pulled out the weighted vest and I dropped 4.5 pounds in 2 days, because I was carrying just an unbelievable amount of inflammation from it. My entire upper body was inflamed from carrying that shit, which is not really a surprise. And this is another reason why, I'm so confident in my ability to get myself in shape. And I'm also so confident in my ability to work how I'm meant to work in the gym. But what I'm not confident in is my ability to put the reins on myself when needed. So it's why I've elicited the help of most likely at the moment it's looking like Alberto Nunez will take over my next diet down from a nutrition side of things, just because I'm really not great at putting that rate limiter on my own output and how far I push, because I just see myself as this physique that could have more body fat off the lower portion of this glute area. And you know what it's like when you get to that point, it's you just think more is better. And that's when you can do more and you're actually a person that can adhere, which is common, to be honest, amongst a lot of high level bodybuilders. A lot of us can adhere to silly protocols. Especially when you're self-coaching, you kind of just do it and you're like, well, probably wouldn't do this for a client, but I'll just try it out myself.
Definitely relate to that. I mean, the biggest problem I always have is over dieting, overdoing it. You know, similar story, like 1,320K steps is the last time I dieted. It was ended up on that, and I always look better 2 weeks later, and I'm like, I missed the peak again, like twice in a row. So yeah, completely get that. But I think it's like you'd rather it be that way than be this person who turns up, you know, soft glutes, right? So that's a better place to be. Yeah. What do you think? What do you think the differentiator is between those who get sort of beach lean and those who get bodyboarding shredded, as you should be, especially on a natural stage?
I think most of it's mental, because that capacity to pass through that point where your body just really doesn't want to go is a large part up here. Yeah. If you, especially what you can do in the gym, it's like that control of the immense fatigue that you get. So you unrack a hack squat, for example, and it just feels like you're not going to be able to move it, but you tell yourself that you can, and the ability to push through those moments in prep, which you should know, if you're experienced, you should know that set is what's going to elicit your muscle retention stimulus. So you should be doing what's required of you in that moment. It's just a lot of people just can't quite tap into that. I also think emotions play a huge role. controlling your emotions in that period of time, because, you know, especially the naturals, you get very emotional, you get very up and down. You start to feel like you can cry over the most silly of things. And, you know, I think I become more like that in post show when hormones start to kick up a little bit, and I've definitely got like some elevated estrogen going on as well. But in the pre-show window, very close, I'm just very sort of like zoned in, quite quiet. I don't even get irritable anymore, because I find, especially on the low food, it's just this Zen focus state that just allows me just to do my tasks of the day and then switch off very early and do the same again.
Yeah,
So
no
I'm
more,
quite
no less.
yeah, I'm quite a boring individual, if I'm honest, at that point in time. And I'm very much aware of that. That's why bodybuilding is such a, you compete and you get the hell out of that state as quickly as you can. It's not a good place to be. But you know, outside of that, I also think it's the actual desire to get into that shape. You've absolutely got to really, really want to look that way, because you are not going to get to that level of conditioning if you don't want it and you don't have that deep desire. So, you know, it's like if you're, you know, general population client wanting to get ready for a photo shoot, but they're coming from a very sort of high level of body fat, they get to that photo shoot condition because of the desire to, and the deep desire to change their body, you know, and look a certain way, to look great in front of a photograph or a photo shoot, whatever. It's that deep burning need. I think with bodybuilding, a lot of the time, unfortunately, in this sort of, you know, rise of social media, people get attracted to the sport for the desire of being a bodybuilder. They don't really understand what it truly means to be a bodybuilder. They get sucked into a prep. They do a prep. They're 5 weeks out, and that turning point comes, and they're like, "This isn't for me. This is not for me," because they don't have that initial like burning desire to be a true bodybuilder, getting into elite stage condition, which is something that you have to be very passionate about to be able to perform.
Absolutely. When you come out of when you execute your reverse diets, do you like quite aggressively getting back to your normal position, or do you take quite a slow approach?
Pretty aggressive out of the gate. So like my stage weight was 152 pounds at most of my shows. I was 159, 160 pounds within a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
And then ever since then, I've come up to 22 pounds above within 12 weeks. So, you know, we're looking at
2 pounds
least,
a week. Yeah.
if we break that up, we're looking at least 2 pounds a week, if not over. Obviously, that initial bit of weight gain does the majority of it, and then from there it's been roughly 1 to 1.5 pounds a week every single week without fail. And if I don't achieve that, I bump up my food until I get up to about this 20 pound, 22 pound above, where everything in the gym feels good. I feel close to relatively getting to normal. Don't get me wrong, I look absolutely, well, in my opinion, I don't look great at all because of rapidly regained body fat, but that's the purpose, you know. So I don't actually take a lot of progress images in that period, because I know what I'm going to look like. I just look softer than I did on the way down at all these body weights. So for me, it's not data that I really need to overanalyze. It's just like, I know what my body comp's going to look like. I've been here before. So I'll recover. I'll get my training performance back up to where it needs to be. And then when I start to baseline out and level out a little bit, I'll then go into a much steadier rate of gain. And even in that steady rate of gain, like the last 2-3 weeks, I've only gained a negligible amount of body weight, very minimal. If not, I've basically maintained. But I'm significantly harder than I was 3 weeks ago because of that just slow and steadiness and my body basically getting settled down, and more of the positive hormonal adaptations that have occurred as well that improve the look. So then I start taking some pictures.
Yeah. From a percentage point of view, what does that look like? Like, where do you like to sit in your off season? And then what's the upper limit you'll go to?
Body fat percentage kind of
wise?
More
just percentage above stage weight.
Above stage weight. So if we're looking at, I don't really know, to be honest. I think in pure numbers, we're looking at always my top end set point will be like 40 to 45 pounds above a previous stage weight. And then I'll tend to, if I'm doing a longer off season, I'll tend to do a 6-month push up to 40 pounds above stage weight. And then I'll do a mini diet back down 10, 12 pounds over 6 weeks. And then I'll come back up to that top end weight, and I'll literally just rinse and repeat that. If I'm doing a very extended off season, so for example, this next off season that might be a year, I'll do 6 months from 152 all the way up to like 190, 192. And then I'll come from 192 back down to about 182, maybe 180. And then I'll go even slower from 180, 182, all the way back up to 192. So that will be like 6 months, but only 10 or 12 pounds. And then if I'm prepping the year after, I'll do a pre-prep diet, which will be similar to a mini cut, pull me back down to maybe the 180s, maybe dipping into the 170s. And then I'll aim to start prep circa 25, 30 pound out from stage weight, maximum. Whereas I started my prep in 2021 at 52 pounds above my end stage weight in 25 weeks.
Oh, okay. So it's quite aggressive the whole way down.
All the way. Yeah. And that was another reason. Yeah. That was another reason why the fatigue was very high, is because that's legit crazy fat loss in that period for anyone to do, let alone someone of a bodybuilder to get into stage condition with losing 52 pounds in that time scale. Like even just like Gen Pop fat loss in 25 weeks, losing 52 pounds would be very good. So it was very assertive the whole way through.
What's your rationale for capping it at 6 months versus staying in a surplus, say for 12, 18 months if you can handle it?
Sure. I mean, yeah, again, this is something that's very auto-regulated. It's not purely a 6-month basis. If I get to that top end weight and, all of the things that I'm measuring be within progress images, performance, how I feel on a day-to-day basis, coupled with some bits of biofeedback that I do like to track is within resting heart rate, blood glucose and blood pressure. If they're all trending in the right place and I'm happy with how they're looking, be absolutely no reason for me to diet. I'll just keep going. And I'm a big believer in that. If you've got more room to push, you push. But I tend to find that by that 6-month mark, for most people, we're starting to get some downward trend in those markers. And we're also starting to see, dare I say it, some bad habits creeping in, some more palatable foods creeping up and up and up. And I think there definitely gets a point where that can become a bit of a problem, and you become a bit of a, without beating around the bush, a bit of an off-season slob. And you need a small yet assertive and a strategic diet just to regather that momentum, get you back into some really good routines. It may be even that your sleep time and wake time has really started to shift as a result of the food you have to get in. So you're staying up later, you're waking up later, your routine's just starting to like fall away from you a little bit. And then that 6-week tidy up comes in and it refreshes everything for you. And you get then a really good productive next run out of it. So again, this isn't the blueprint for everyone. I've had people spend 14, 18 months in a surplus if needs must. And those tend to also be the people that are the most resilient to surplus. Again, within like the individual markers that we're tracking, blood glucose is one of those that for some people it just never gets affected. Like they just handle inflammation from training very well. Their sleep routine's always fantastic. Their ability to assimilate glycogen and carbohydrate is fantastic as well. Again, just another sort of a genetic influence of how long people are able to withstand the process of trying to adapt the body. So yeah,
Talk about the blood markers. What are you looking at and what are you tracking? Can you give some more specific numbers, maybe for yourself personally?
Actually, taking blood work as opposed to blood glucose?
Yeah, just blood glucose, heart rate. What are you looking at? What sort of numbers do you think are good for you personally? When is it like, okay, well, I'm getting sloppy now? What's some barometers here?
When I start to see my fasted blood glucose creep above 5 millimoles, that's starting to get into a range which, if it's consistently creeping up above that mark, I'll want to assess a few things, whether it's within my management of recovery, whether it's within my stress, whether it's within my sleep. Even some small nutrient timing changes can be can be put in at that point and start to improve that slightly. The main thing that I find is when that's trending consistently above that 5 mark, I'm already feeling a little shitty. I'm already feeling a bit more lethargic. See, this is why I don't always, like, not all of my clients measure their blood glucose, because a lot of them are able to actually just tell me when they feel this way. They're feeling more lethargic after meals. Like, for example, just before I got on this podcast, I ate about 100 carb. Now I feel okay at the moment. And if I started to eat that meal and then all I want to do is go to sleep and I can't even do anything because I'm just unproductive, that's the point where I'm like, there's something maybe not great about the way that meal's sitting, or it's too close to stacked previously to the last meal. So I'm thinking about some of those things. Resting heart rate, typically I like to keep mine below 60 in a fasted state, or a resting state, which is measured at the lowest point during the night, usually with the Oura ring. So that's like a representation of what it looks like at its absolute lowest. And obviously with blood pressure, just keeping it within general recommendation ranges, really. And actually for me, blood pressure is one of those that I have to keep some form of aerobic work in. I found during my off seasons, because this is another reason why I'm pretty confident I could realistically never make a good go at going assisted, is because high blood pressure does actually run quite commonly in my family. So I find when I'm pushing the 40 pound above stage weight, mine's creeping up a little higher than I would like off season. So I tend to, at that point, bring down caffeine a little bit. I make sure I do my aerobic work, and I just stay on top of all of my other routine aspects of things. But yeah, other than that, it's just like, I could do all of this probably without taking all of these things and without tracking them. I personally just like tracking them. I like data. I like writing it on a spreadsheet, and I like having it look back on where I was at this time last year. Some people, and even some of my clients, just don't have the time for it or don't enjoy it. They get too attached to it. They put on an Oura ring and immediately get a bad night's sleep because they're worried about it tracking the sleep. So with those people, I don't force the matter. I just say, like, just tell me how you feel, tell me how your sleep was, and just take quite a chilled approach to it.
You considered being assisted. You mentioned it there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I when I first got into bodybuilding, it was just like when I was like 18. I said to myself, I'd do one natural show and then I'll go assisted, because I wanted to look like an assisted bodybuilder. The only videos that I watched were the muscular development videos of, like, all the top bodybuilders at the time, the people that were coming up through NPC nationals and following, like Cody Montgomery and people like this. Like, I didn't look up to any naturals. I didn't even know that natural bodybuilding really was as good as it was. And I went to my first show. BNBF Midlands was my first ever show that I ever went to, and I saw what was achievable as a natural athlete, and immediately changed my mind. I was like, right, I don't need to go assisted, because I'd be quite happy looking like some of these top guys that were competing at that show. They had enough muscularity for me to be like, this is motivating for me to chase that down. And even now I'm really glad that I ultimately made that decision and was aware of natural bodybuilding, because there's a lot of things about natural bodybuilding that I genuinely prefer in terms of the look. I prefer how you can be still quite a muscular individual, but have a well-maintained midsection and stomach control. And, you see a lot of these dudes that are in the top tier, the assisted, and they look great for a still image, but you see them start to relax and pose in a more relaxed environment, and their midsections don't look like how they look when they're hitting an abs and thigh. They don't. And I don't know whether I would like that on a daily basis. So also for me, I like I said, the more I learned about the side effects of PEDs, even with the safer use model, let's face it, if you want to be one of the best, it's not safe. However safe you do it, it's just can be safer. But if you want to be the best of the best, you've got to, more drugs is more drugs. So, and more drugs is potentially more stimulus to grow in most people. You're obviously going to hit the upper threshold, but you've got to really push the limits if you want to be one of the best. So, yeah, with me, it's like, the blood pressure side of things. I had really bad skin when I was younger, and I'd be very, very surprised if I didn't get really bad skin on gear. And I like my skin being good. I don't think I could. I think I'd psychologically be in a poor place if I went back to being like looking like a teenager, but with massive muscles. I don't think that's enough for me. So I've got a lot of goals to tick off as an actual athlete as well. I feel like I've also found quite a clear niche with my coaching in the natural scene. So I'm very happy with the long-term approach that I've sort of said to myself that stay natural.
I remember when I made the choice like never to touch gear, and it was I think I've always liked the idea of natural bodybuilding where you have to think a bit more. You can't just rely on more drugs. You have to be a bit more strategic. Everything you put in, you get out. There's no lying about it, right? I think that honesty around natural bodybuilding is what I've always loved. Mm-hmm. And I think the best natural bodybuilders are also probably the hardest workers, the diligent year round. And you just can't cheat the game, right? You can't cheat it.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
So when you talk about potential, what do you think is possible as a natural bodybuilder? What do you think is possible for natural muscle building as a whole over the course of a lifetime? And do you think there is a cap for?
I mean, I don't necessarily think there's a cap, and there's a point at which you will stop maybe growing, as well, definitely as much muscle as you were growing in sort of like your younger years. But I think you can continue to improve in some aspects, even into your late 40s, and proof in the pudding with that with some athletes out there. And I think there was ultimately a decline at some point. Look at someone like Philip Ricardo Jr. He was better some years ago than he is now. And, I believe he's getting into his 50s. So I think, when you start to get into the sort of the late 40s, the early 50s, you've got to appreciate that your physique's probably not going to be its best as it was in sort of your early 30s, perhaps. I think most natural bodybuilders will reach their peak in their mid to early 30s. I think that's going to be sort of your golden years in terms of being at your absolute peak muscularity, whilst being able to have the like physiological environment to get all the way in, get shredded. So I think a lot of people set like pretty subpar limitations on themselves as a natural athlete, you can only gain a pound of muscle a year. And, I also set very sort of low level of strength limitations as well. But you only have to look at, a sport like powerlifting to see how far the numbers have come up over the last decade to realize that the knowledge we're accruing, the ability to understand what is right from a nutritional strategy standpoint, how to do this process, we're just getting better and better at it. So the results are only going to get better and better with that. I also think that you're very right with what you said. Like when you're natural, you only have certain tools in your toolbox. So if you're a natural athlete, how many tools are you using in your toolbox? If you're using all of them, you can probably make some pretty damn ridiculous progress, because there's a lot of naturals out there that I know are using all their tools and they make very, very good progress year on year. But then you get other naturals that will live with this I am natural mindset, and will also be the people that don't sleep well and don't time their meals well, that do grab and go approaches to their nutrition year round, that go into an off season, don't have any strategy, so it's when you are natural, yes, you have a more simplistic route to success, but you have to be extremely you have to double down on those tools that you have got, because they are all that you have got as an athlete.
Yeah, totally agree. And when it comes to the aspect of training, one thing I've always been curious about for yourself, I mean, you've increased your strength levels quite significantly over the last couple of years. How have you fared with like managing injury risk and managing that aspect of it? Have you been quite fortunate with injuries, or have you had your own battles with it? And if you have been good with them, what have you done to keep yourself healthy along the way?
Yeah, good question. I think I feel scared saying this. I'll touch
it for you as well.
Yeah, I feel like I'm very aware of when there's red lights, and I will either do strategies in which I will avoid certain movement patterns on a day where it doesn't feel like it's there. I won't battle it. I believe that I've learned a lot over the years about how I can effectively program my training to make the most of the things that I think carry value in terms of loading the lower back, and the things that I don't feel carry much value in terms of loading the lower back. So a prime example of this is that the most injuries that I ever accrued was when I tried to do the barbell back squat and when I tried to run a barbell bench press. Whenever I ran those exercises, I always got hurt. So I realized that I simply cannot run those exercises if I want to do the things that I believe really offer value in terms of erectors and just general posterior chain development, like the deadlift or a hip hinge variant. So I can drive up a deadlift, no problems, but I just can't have a back squat in the same microcycle. So I don't do it. I've tried it multiple times, again and again and again. I reached the same outcome. I just can't do it. So I've gotten, over the last few years, very strong at hack squatting, very proficient at hack squatting, very good at leg pressing, even leg extending, leg exercises that really build my quads, not just marrying this back squat ideal that I'd love to back squat. I'd love to back squat 5 plates for reps and stuff. And maybe one day I'll pull out all the other lower back loading and I'll just go in on the back squat. Maybe I will. But for now, for my goals, it's just not purposeful. So I think staying injury free has been a big byproduct of focusing on what's bringing me the most productive, pain-free, niggle-free training. When I get a niggle, I'm pretty much on it with soft tissue work or just avoiding hurting it again. I would also say that getting stage lean like relatively frequently over the last 5 years or so, the longest off season I've done was 2 years, where 2018, 2019. And that off season I did pick up a few niggles just because of the amount of time that I spent trying to overload, and that's a big thing. Like when you diet down and there comes a turning point where you spend a lot of the rest of your contest season maintaining performance, which whilst you are in a compromised position within, your body fat levels to train safely, because you're not progressing, it's just not the same demand on the body. And I've only realized it as of late in the last month or so, how much different it feels when you are overloading. It's just a completely different toll on the whole body, the whole systemic system. You wake up, you feel way more battered than you do during prep because the sessions are just beating you up. So I think that helps. And then also soft tissue work, like every Monday without fail, I have soft tissue work. So after this podcast, I've got soft tissue work. Guy comes around to my house, works over. I say, okay, this shoulder's not feeling great. Work into that area. And it's what I used to use soft tissue as was, okay, I'm injured. Let's go get a massage. That would be it. Be like, okay, I've injured my hip or my lower back. Let's go get a massage. Now it's, okay, I've got this niggle. Can we get into it before it becomes an injury? Or I've got no niggles. Just give me a little sort of MOT, so to speak. And then we go again. And then finally, I think fatigue management within training periodization. So coming away from training when the time's right, when I start to get, again, this is another benefit of having biofeedback on your side, is when you start to see, your body composition is good, but your blood glucose is climbing. Okay. Still in the same routine, sleep's all good. Okay. What could be causing that? My resting heart rate's up. My sleep is interrupted from my Aura ring data. My appetite's down. All right. Okay. It's probably time to deload. It's probably time to do a devolume. I am more of a fan as of late of doing the devolumes. I found
By devolume, do you mean drop the volume, right?
Yeah. I know it's a weird word.
Yeah, I've not heard that one.
Yeah. So yeah, I call it. I think I definitely didn't make it up, but I call it with clients a devolume. Some people hate it because it's not actually a word. But yeah, I found with the deload, so the days off, psychological break, good. By day 4, I'm eager to get into the gym. First week back of training, I am significantly more sore if I go in at normal volume. And I feel like I'm also playing catch up with some neurological adaptations, even just after 4 days off. Like things just don't feel as good. So I found that was okay. I definitely gave joints, tendons, and ligaments a good break though, because you just don't load them at all. You just sit and you don't train. I also found that I'd always dropped off more inflammation from deloads as opposed to devolumes, because I'm just out of the gym in a very low stress environment. And sometimes I still do the 4 days off when appropriate. Normally when I've been an idiot and I've pushed for too long, basically, and I can't even go into the gym and do devolumes. But typically I do like to go in and do lower volume sessions. Typically the way I'll run them is I'll do my back off sets only. And I will do a match of the previous numbers of the last rotation and the back off set. So without the fatigue of the top set, the back off set typically falls a 2 RIR. So I'm training with 2 reps in reserve, and I'm also training with less total volume. And this seems to be really good at pulling away fatigue. And again, a relatively decent rest from a joint, tendon, ligament standpoint, because we're reducing the loading significantly, but also neurologically, we're breaking away from those sets which demand so much of you. You know, you approach a 5 or 6 rep pull off the floor. It's a completely different feeling to when you know you're going to do 10 plus reps with it. Because you know every single rep, if you screw up one of your bracing patterns, the set's done. Whereas a 10 to 12 repper, you can have a few reps here or there, which maybe aren't perfect, and the weight will still move from A to B. I probably won't hurt you either. So yeah, that's typically, I think, what I've done to manage niggles and injuries pretty well.
Yeah. How do you manage your progression models on a week to week basis? Do you use like specific type of periodization, or is it literally just look at the logbook, see what I did last week, let's add a rep if I can, if not, do it the week after, that kind of mentality?
Yeah, it's typically look at the logbook, let's see what I got last week. If I think a realistic progression is on from a rep standpoint, I'll work within a given rep range. So a top set typically will be like 6 to 9 reps. Back off set typically 11 to 15 reps, something like that, along those lines. Again, these are not fixed numbers; they're just ballpark. And then if I'm on a day where I'm like, kind of, you know, I've got numbers in my head, but I don't know whether I'm going to be able to beat this rep PB, I'll just put a load on that's kind of like somewhere in between, and I'll hit something that I know is a new set, you know, a new set with that specific load. So for example, the last 2 deadlift sessions, I'd done sets at 220 and a set at 230. Yesterday, I went in at 225 because I kind of didn't know whether I was going to beat the 220 number. I didn't really know whether I was going to beat the 230 number based on how the warm-ups felt. So I knew if I put 225 on, I had no pressure to beat a number. And I knew if I got roughly in between the 220 and the 230 set, it would have been a decent day. And that's exactly what I did. So
it's a good way to play the game with it, because that's another way of managing niggles and injuries, right? Because sometimes you put that 220 on, you're like, I want to get an extra rep. That extra rep might screw you. So
correct.
Good way to play the game. So it's just very much like logbook, and then when your body is feeling it, let's devolume, deload, depending on what you think's best.
Yeah, 100%. Very auto-regulated, very reactive with my own training.
How do you think people can become more auto-regulated in their training? What sort of things should they be tuning into? Because it is very much a trial and error basis that comes from years of experience, as we both know. But for people listening, how can they start cultivating that trial and error auto-regulation mentality? What sort of things should they be paying attention to on a week-to-week basis?
I think when you're going to the gym for your session itself, your readiness for that session will dictate a lot of what the previous sessions created in terms of fatigue. Like within the session itself, sometimes the fatigue you feel is not reflective of the actual workout itself. It's actually reflective of the prior workouts. And then it's reflective of what's gone on within that 24-hour window of that day. So you could have a particularly stressful day at work, you'd be driving to the gym and your eyes could be closing and you think, you know what, this session's too much, or this day I need an extra rest day. Where in reality, it could have been a combination of factors from the microcycle itself, you know. So I like to think of training across the whole microcycle, so the full rotation. At the moment, I'm on a 7-day split. In my prep, I was on a 10-day split. So I like to think about the whole thing. What's impeding the next session? What's brought me into this session with high level of fatigue? Whether it was a particular movement, whether it was, for example, I did a back off set on a deadlift when I only used to do one set. Should I have done that back off set? Did it pull me into a place where I couldn't recover for the next session? I think, things like mind muscle connection, pumps, they're all, again, indicators of well-managed fatigue. If you get consistently good pumps, consistently good mind muscle connection, we know that we're not sort of damaging neurological pathways enough to then create, a bit like no ability to contract muscle in a session. Well, you're not just moving weight from A to B for the sake of doing another session. I think that you obviously need to use the logbook as a big guiding tool, your progressions within that structure. If you're in a surplus or even a slight maintenance, your ability to continue to be ready enough to progress somewhat in the session, whether it's through increasing reps, weights, or even just an increase in form, you're creating some degree of novelty at least every couple of weeks. And then make notes, make notes in your logbook. Just put down, how you felt going into the gym, put down the success of the session. I always rate it out of 10. And yeah, I think also some people just need to structure deloads and devolumes as non-negotiables. So you put them in every 6 weeks without fail. Typically for me in an off season, I'll be lucky to string together any more than 6 weeks of training without needing to back off. Most of my clients that can train very hard are pretty similar. And some of them will just never tell me that they feel remotely tired. They'll just keep going and going and going. And it takes, even in the initial phase of me learning their body a bit, it either takes me to plan and pre-plan the deloads and put them in for them. And then I just keep doing that. Or it takes some cases, and that's a bad judgment call. I've made it in the past. They get a niggle or they get injured. And then you're like, shit, they probably should have done a deload before this. Or it takes, logbook numbers starting to really take a decline. And then you like, okay, this is the point at which we need to pull back. So again, you also learn a lot of what makes you as an individual feel fatigued. I actually measure a lot of my fatigue off how I'm able to work. If I start to get a heavy drop off in terms of my want and desire to come and do my work for the morning, and I'm procrastinating more, I will know that that's my time, because unless I'm very fatigued, I don't procrastinate. I just get the work done that needs to be done. So yeah, learn your signs basically, and then use them.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think it's an important caveat that this all matters only when you train very hard. If you're not training hard, then none of this is relevant really.
Yeah,
you don't need to be doing D volumes every 6 weeks if you're training with 3 reps in the tank. No,
you don't. You won't need them.
Brilliant. So AJ, what's the plan for 2022 and 2023? You competing this year? Is it just pure growth phase? What's the plan?
Pure growth for me. So yeah, a year off. The longer recovery phase was one of the reasons. Got a lot of clients on stage this year. It's going to be a big season for me as a coach. So that's a primary focus of mine and where I'm focusing a lot of my attention. And then in other areas, I've had a lot of ideas. You know what it's like when you're on prep and you have a couple too many coffees, you get a million and different business ideas that you want to progress with, and you can't progress with because you haven't got the time at that present moment. So I've got a lot of cool ideas within the Be Epic clothing side of things. We're just working with a clothing designer at the moment to really sort of like launch that brand into what will be the old school clothing sort of space, which I believe has got a good gap in the market at the moment for to be sort of pushed into. So I'm really, really excited to develop that, because it's clothing that I love to wear and I love to represent. And I just get a really good kick out of watching other people fit that mold as well when they decide to sort of, wear old school baggy bottoms and rag tops. It just looks fucking cool and I want to bring it back. So that's exciting. But yeah, big focus business wise this year. And then next year, I hope to most likely step on stage again. And again, I don't have any like real attachment to a pro card or anything like that. My sole vision now competitively in terms of what my absolute ultimate goal is to win the UK DFBA overall British title.
UK DFBA.
The UK drug free. And that is literally my utmost of goals. And I don't really mind how long it takes to get there. If that means 2 years off season, 3 years off season, regardless of what it's needed, I'll do the do. So,
you come away from the BNBF.
I don't typically compete with the BNBF. I've got a very close relationship with Lee, who runs the UK DFBA Lee Kemp. He's sort of been very much like a family figure in my life, really, mate. He's given me so many opportunities. We first got close in 2017 when he fully funded me to go out to Worlds as a junior. It was my first time in the States, and him and his wife Amy, they sort of just spent time with me. We became very, very close, and ever since then it's been like, hey, immediately after that I was like, okay, what can I do for you? So then I started helping them with some of their social media and show promotion through YouTube, and turning up at every single show and filming it for them and putting on my YouTube channel. Actually think maybe it was one of your shows I recorded. Maybe it wasn't actually. I think that was the year before. And yeah, I just loved giving back to them. And again, just like sort of nurtured that relationship. And the natural bodybuilding scene is much like any other. There is politics involved, and there's luckily enough, the BNBF and UKDFBA are forming a bit more of a positive alliance now, and they're working together, which is lovely to see. So that's not to say that I wouldn't compete in the BNBF in the future, but I've definitely got a lot of goals within the UKDFBA. So that's pretty much what I'm chasing down.
Fantastic. Well, look, AJ, I know you got a massage at 4, which was it was great to hear when you told me that. I was like, hey, can you 4? No, I've got a massage. I was like, I haven't heard that from someone on a Monday. But, to wrap up, do you want to tell where people can find out more about some of the content you're putting out there, some of the videos you've got? Where's the best place to find you?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, like I said at the start, thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being so cooperative at the time. I have a YouTube channel called AJ Morris. I upload every Sunday pretty much when we've got good content to put up there. All the hot sort of the what's expected now on YouTube, which is this high quality videographer style. I'd love to just bring a tripod and put some clips together, but people don't watch that stuff anymore as much as the new school way of doing it. But I enjoy producing that too, and we work with some really good people. So that's my YouTube channel. I have an Instagram, obviously, where I post most of my training, and that's AJ Morris _. And then if anyone's interested in reaching out for coaching or consultation, then go to my website, madebymorriscoaching.com, and you can grab all the sort of details and contact points through there.
Fantastic. We definitely carved out a good niche in natural bodybuilding in the UK. So I hope to see you continue to grow. We first met, I think, it's probably about 5-6 years ago at a show that I was competing at. So yeah, it's been great to see your growth, and I hope it continues.
Thank you, dude. Appreciate it.